Today, two violent attacks left communities in separate states on edge, with investigators searching for answers. In Michigan, a driver ran a truck into a synagogue and school, the latest incident involving a temple and the Jewish community in North America.
No one but the gunman was killed, but law enforcement officials told reporters they believe he had a large amount of explosives in the vehicle. And earlier in Virginia, a university campus was once again the scene of deadly gunfire. FBI officials say this afternoon that the gunman wanted the attack to be similar to the Fort Hood shooting back in 2009. Authorities say ROTC students subdued and killed the shooter. Officials say they are investigating a shooting this morning at Old Dominion University as a possible act of terrorism. Authorities say the gunman, Mohammed Jalloh, killed one person and wounded two others. The gunman was also killed in the shooting. It wasn't immediately clear how he died. The school says the gunman opened fire shortly before 11 a.m. Eastern at a building on the university's Norfolk campus. The gunman was a former National Guard member who previously served prison time after pleading guilty to attempting to aid the terror group ISIS. Then in Michigan this afternoon, billowing smoke and a swarm of law enforcement vehicles at a synagogue outside Detroit. More than 200 officers responded to reports of an active shooter at Temple Israel, which is the nation's largest Reform synagogue, which also houses an on-site preschool. Authorities say the suspect drove a car into the synagogue building before security guards on site opened fire.
We can't say what killed him at this point, but security did engage the suspect with gunfire. He breached the building, drove down the hall, and he was engaged by security.
Smoke could be seen pouring out from the synagogue's roof as officers wearing respirators moved in to secure the building. One security guard who was knocked unconscious is expected to recover. None of the 140 children at the school or any of the teachers were hurt.
There were multiple security officers on scene, and the one that was hurt was pulled from that area by his team.
The incident in Michigan comes as several synagogues across North America have been targeted in recent weeks, including in Toronto. Officials said law enforcement in the area were prepared for the potential of violence, and FBI agents had trained for an active shooter event there back in January.
Anytime there's a concern, there's communication, there's extra patrol, extra attention, extra warnings. That had all happened for the weeks leading up to this. The team inside that building was very queued up, and I know the chief had communicated directly with their head of security weeks ago.
Local authorities say there are no ongoing threats to the community, and Temple Israel today called its security personnel heroes.
For more on today's attacks, I'm joined now by Juliette Kayyem of the Homeland Security Project at Harvard's Kennedy School. She previously served as Assistant DHS Secretary during the Obama administration. Juliette, thanks for joining us. Let's begin with the university shooting in Virginia. We have the suspect's name from officials now. We know he was a former Army National Guardsman, as Geoff just reported, with a previous conviction in 2016, providing material support to ISIS. What do you take away from this right now? What questions do you still have?
Well, he was just recently released, and this is someone who was not purged, so to speak, of his interest in ISIS and in violence. How you put that together with his target, we do not know yet. It just may be that this was a target-rich environment, a university, and he went in to kill. The good news in both instances in this horrible world we live in which good news is, did they minimize the harm, is that the quick action by ROTC students apparently led to no additional casualties. And that's what, in some ways, that's how you judge success, is that can you just minimize the harm? But right now, the linkage between why this location at this time, we do not know yet.
Let's turn now to the Michigan synagogue attack. And if you have previously noted, as we have talked about, synagogues have been on high alert for years. You wrote a piece about this back in 2022 when you talked about how synagogues shouldn't have to be fortresses, but they do have to maximize defenses here. It does seem like the armed guards in this case played a role in minimizing the harm. What do you see in this incident?
That's absolutely right. I mean, it is, as far as we know from early reporting, that the car was a weapon of mass destruction. It comes into the building, and that the perpetrator, the terrorist, wanted to kill lots more people, including likely children. It was the quick action by not one, but several internal security officers that essentially minimize the harm in this instance. I, of course, am not talking about the emotional harm that is impacting members of that community, of the Jewish community there, but obviously throughout the United States. Mm-hmm. We do not know, but I think it's fair, to at least raise the possibility that this is also related to Islamic terrorism, just given the focus of the synagogue at this time in the United States and in the threat environment. We talked about this just a few days ago. It is an elevated threat environment for in particular or specifically Islamic-related terrorism, whether that comes from someone who just got out of prison and is still interested in ISIS, or something that is state-sponsored, either mostly from Iran. That we don't know yet. And I will say, the environment is so high. We sometimes the exact motive of that particular individual we do not know. We know many countries in the Middle East are now impacted by the war, and if it's related to what's happening in Iran or in the Gulf or Lebanon, we do not know at this stage. But you'd have to, every law enforcement person I have talked to in the last 2 weeks, this is the thing that they fear the most, that the war unleashes something unforgivable, unjustifiable, but nonetheless somewhat predictable, and that is terrorism that is inspired by Islam.
And we know, of course, officials, specifically with the Michigan synagogue attack, are going to be briefing. We'll continue to post updates online for anyone following the latest news. But Juliette is someone who has worked in this space and studies this space. How are investigators approaching both of these incidents, if there's a common thread between both of them or not, to try to get some answers and try to prevent similar attacks from happening in the future?
So right now there are a variety of ways. I will say they will look at the connections between the two, but just given the MO of each, it is hard to see whether there is a direct connection. It may just be a coincidence of timing. What we can do now is two things. One is obviously it's defense right now. It is fortifying institutions that we think might be subject to harm or focus. That includes that's not just the U.S. stuff, like embassies or consulates. Mm-hmm. It is, of course, synagogues and places of worship here in the United States, places where the Jewish community may convene. It is not good that we have to do this. This is a threat that the Jewish community has faced for many, many years, but it's more acute now. The other is that in almost all of these cases, someone around the person doing it may have known. We call it spillage in law enforcement. They talk about it. They show an interest in something they hadn't shown before. They seem to be secretive. Maybe the guns are noticed in the room. This is where law enforcement is very dependent on the community, right, around these people, whether it's a social community, family community, or religious community, to step forward early and say they don't like what something is different about this individual.
Juliette Kayyem of Harvard's Kennedy School. Always good to speak with you and hear your expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Support your local PBS station. Your local station needs you now. Your generous financial support is more critical than ever to keep your local PBS station strong. Make a gift today to continue to provide a home for the News Hour and other programs you rely on.